Okay, today we are looking at intelligence, and we have, as I said, we looked at life, we looked at love, we looked at power, and now we're looking at intelligence. And as you look through the Bible, as you look through spiritual literature, I don't know that these qualities are listed any place as the qualities of God, but they're listed every place. They're named a number of times, different ways, but I don't know that I've ever seen them all in one place. Maybe Emily Cady said put them in order in her book, Lessons in Truth. But it's as I thought about this over time, we're always looking for a way to describe the indescribable, that is God. And we can't really describe God, something that is invisible, except in terms of ways to think about God. And so we think of God as life, and we can say every place, every living thing is full of this energy we call life. Love is that activity of that I have pointed out, draws to us that which is for our highest good and repels that which is not, or dissolves that which is not. We see that action all through every aspect of all living forms. Power is another one that is, everything is empowered. Everything that's alive is alive with the spiritual power. And it's not always the lightning bolts. It's not always the earthquakes, the things we think of as power, although it is those as well. But power manifests in the blade of grass. It manifests in the drop of water. It manifests every place. And today it's intelligence. And this is really one of my favorites because intelligence really is the one quality, the one aspect that is not expressed through all living forms equally. It seems to be regulated, and I think there's a very important reason for that. It's so all things can fit pretty much in the niche that they are given, or that they have. And we'll talk about that just a little bit more. So we're talking about the fourth week of Advent is how we're using it, is looking at intelligence and order. As a fourth attribute of God, intelligence expresses through us His order. So we've all seen patterns in nature, such as the amazing design of the nautilus, the petals of a flower, or the colors of a rainbow. It is difficult to imagine there not being intelligence behind these orderly patterns. And we're not talking about intelligent design. That's kind of a whole religious approach to this thing. Although I find, as I have studied that idea, that I agree with a lot of it. But they still seem to try to take it back to this old man in the sky, that he's the intelligent one creating all these intelligent things. Whereas our approach, or the approach I would take, is that intelligence is like all of the other powers. It's present every place, but some things are open wider to it than others, and that seems to be regulated by the brain. That's one of the regulators. Things like plants. Do plants have brains? They have something. There's some, intelligence definitely expresses through them, but science can't trace it back to a central brain like you can with an organism. And but I think the brain plays a role, and when we talk about evolution, the evolution of humankind, I don't think we're talking about the evolution of the soul. I think the soul has always been complete, always is what it is. It's the spiritual essence of God. So that doesn't ever improve. But the ability to express that in intelligence, brain size and all that, we can do a pretty good job of tracing that back, to our ancient ancestors that aren't fully human like we are. I don't know what you call them exactly, but Lucy, for example, 3 to 7 million years ago, wasn't quite an ape, wasn't quite a human, somewhere in between. Australopithecine, I think is what she was. And they have found a number of these creatures. But evolution is definitely a fact, but it is a fact that occurs on the human level. And I would say that the life that supports the human being or supports the earthworm or supports, any other living form is exactly the same. That has never evolved, but it shows itself through different forms. But intelligence is something that we think we can measure. And that's an interesting question, too, because I think they're re-examining that whole idea of IQ and all that continually. That's under the microscope all the time. But most of us are a little more intelligent than, say, an earthworm. I think we can kind of agree with that. But could we live the life of an earthworm? We wouldn't know how to do it. So the intelligence they express is perfect for that place that they are. And you can kind of take that into any aspect of life, the way they express intelligence. And it's not that we're smarter than anything else. It's just that that's not our environment. And they know exactly how to live, wherever they are. And it's a pretty fascinating study. But Genesis opens with God saying, "Let there be light," one of the most famous sayings out of the Bible, I think. We know this is not a reference to the sun and moon because these come on the third day. The writer is affirming the presence of divine intelligence as a foundational aspect of reality. And again, I really like this particular shot of the moon or the earth, whatever it is, but you see the blackness around it, and we say there's no light there. Well, there is. There's the same amount of light in the blackness as there is reflecting off the moon. It's just that there's an object there to catch it. And if we think of ourselves in that way, we are the object that is capturing the light of God. We are the object that is capturing that omnipresence. It's always there. The body will someday step away. It'll someday drop off. But the life that we are is still there. The life that supports us is still there. So when you read Genesis, that's the first thing that God says, "Let there be light." And it's the ancient Hebrew is saying this. God is not saying this. They're putting the words in God's mouth. But what the ancient Hebrew is acknowledging is there is a deeper reality to the material world. There's a deeper essence, a life, an intelligence. That was the first thing. And we have to be careful when we think about creation because this was never created. It always is. And again, I was listening last night to another scientific presentation of the universe and how great it is, and it's phenomenal. How they say there are as many galaxies as there are more galaxies than there are grains of sand on the entire planet Earth. And I don't know who counted those for sure, but it's I have to take their word for it. But they still keep going back to this Big Bang thing, where it all started in a minuscule particle, subatomic level that blew up one day and made all these things. And I just can't buy that. They're going to have to, they can keep on it because all the textbooks say it, and they're going to have to republish everything if they ever discover something different. But I don't buy that, because what made that particle? Where did that come from? There's a beginning of that. There's got to be somewhere, and nobody can describe what that is. They just say, well, it's just a particle, it's just floating around. That doesn't make any sense. How come there aren't more particles like that floating around? And why aren't more universes blowing up? It just, I understand why they come up with things like this, but what I don't understand is why they would poke fun of the writers of the Bible and turn around and tell us this story. To me, this story is a lot harder to swallow than the Bible. And I don't believe that the whole place was created in 6 days either. But this is, we've got to think outside of several boxes when we're thinking about our relationship to God, the presence of intelligence. Science would say the time intelligence appeared was when organisms, physical organisms appeared. That's when intelligence began to show up. Well, you got to back that up. What caused that? You know, there's some order, there's some intelligence, something happened. And I do believe, because you look at the fossil record, you go back and there's no humans, there's no cats, there's no dogs, there's no anything but these little squiggly whatevers, you know, I don't know, not something you'd want to be around to see probably. But there's no question that on the physical level there has been evolution. But why? Something came along in a material sense that was able to pick up on this life and reflect it, begin reflecting it, and begin showing it. And okay, it starts out small. It's got a little brain. It wiggles around in the ocean. It does whatever early life did. And that evolves because the environment keeps getting better and better and better, more able to support larger forms of life. All of that makes sense to me. But to say life began back in the ocean 4 billion years ago, whatever it is, life never began. It's always been. It's just been looking for a way to express itself. And so when a life form shows up, it has it. And it will take that life form and it'll run with it. Apparently, keeps looking for more and more ways to express itself because life is infinite. This energy that in which we live and move and have our being is infinite, and there is no material creation that can handle all of what it is, and so it keeps trying to push forward to expand itself. That's just its nature. And if everything was destroyed suddenly, all this earth was destroyed, it would start over. It may take a long time to start over, but I think it would. That's my theory. And has nothing to do with the Big Bang. It has to do with understanding that this thing we call God, it's not an old man in the sky. It's an energy field that we live in, and it's always looking for ways to express, in greater ways to express, because it's infinite. It doesn't want to be confined, and so it keeps looking for ways to expand. So the human being eventually comes along with this capability of expressing beyond anything that has been created so far. Now, we're not utilizing that so well all the time, but we have totally changed the way Earth looks and what we see in terms of Earth. Before we came along, you know, there were no houses, there were no cities, cars, no electric cars, none of that stuff was around. But we brought that all in. Some of it has been an expression of good intelligence and some was not. But it's still, we are capable beyond any other life form. We're capable of expressing intelligence in ways that is not known there. That doesn't mean that, well, we're getting where we can live in almost every environment. You know, we're up in space, we're down in the ocean, and places we're not supposed to be, places that the ancient Hebrew would never imagine. That's why they put God up in the sky. They didn't think we'd ever get up there, to prove them wrong. And or God used to be on the mountain. God used to be always in places we can't get to at that particular time. And that's by design. It's because this is always going to be out of your reach. And what we do is we come along and say, no, it's always within your reach. It's a little difficult trying to tap it, trying to communicate with it, but it's right here. And in some ways, that's more difficult of a concept than thinking God is up in the sky. You say God is within, well, you've got the problem of how do you communicate? How do you open yourself to that inner presence? So that's where the topic today comes in, is we say we are immersed in infinite intelligence, and it is pushing through us to try to express itself in greater degrees. And so I don't know how to commune with God. I don't know how to communicate with God. Show me, God. Show me. I have the intelligence to do it. Show me how to do it. Show me what I need to do. Show me where I need to put my mind, my thinking, so I can receive what is already here. And whatsoever you ask for in prayer, believe you've received it. That's what Jesus is saying. That which we are seeking at this deeper level is always present. And so we affirm it is here. Let there be light. That's not asking. It's affirming. It's saying, let's let this happen. And that's what we say too. We should not think of intelligence as being created with this declaration, let there be light, but only that the author is saying that intelligence is a fundamental aspect of God. See, the ancient Hebrew was a lot wiser than we realize. And really the whole point of that first chapter in Genesis is to say, in the beginning, God. In the beginning, God. John came along much later and said the same thing. But that's the point that he's making. And that is a basic idea that we always want to get back to when we're dealing with some challenge in life. I have forgotten, see, I'm worried about something. That means I have forgotten the presence of God is here, because God is present as life, love, power, and intelligence. So I've forgotten that. So I say my first affirmation, in the beginning, God. That when is the beginning? The beginning is always now. It's always this now moment. This is the first moment of the rest of our experience, the rest of our life. So we can't be anywhere but here. So that's a very powerful realization to have. And I don't think the ancient Hebrew was saying that just to make sure everybody falls in line with the religious beliefs of the day. This person was a mystic. This person had the understanding that God is a presence, everywhere present, and it's really a beautiful thing when you look at it from that way. So of the four spiritual resources, life, love, power, and intelligence, intelligence is the one that is not equally expressed by all life forms, which is what I just said. Its regulation appears to be tied to brain function. This apparently allows for endless diversity, with every species having the ability to successfully fill its own niche. And a good way to think of this is think of the presence of divine intelligence as sunlight and a life form's ability to express it as a window. There are large windows, there are small windows, but each one lets in the same light. And I think that's a good analogy, because the sunlight is the same no matter what size window it comes through. But we do know that a larger window allows for more light to come through. Small window, no, very simple idea. But if you put say the human brain is capable of, it's a big window. It's capable of expressing a wider range of intelligence than, say, the earthworm or the rabbit or whatever. It's just the difference in the size of the window, but the intelligence is exactly the same. That's how we can start thinking of God as, like, I'm not smarter than you, I just have a bigger window. It's like, if we're talking about animals, we don't put ourselves superior to them in the sense that we have greater access to this light. It's just that we have a greater ability to express it in what we call intelligent expression. So that brings us back to this idea that one presence, one power. It's the same every place, expressed at different levels. When you are having a bad day, and we all have them, and actually nobody has a bad day, we have a bad attitude in the day. So where does this divine intelligence go? When you feel you don't know what to do with the problem that's at hand, where is that divine intelligence? Has it run off someplace? Is it in another galaxy now? And you're left here all by yourself. The whole idea of this is to bring it back, is to say, I am in it, and it is in me. It is, yes, I'm shutting down my perception right now, but I'm not chasing it away. I'm not chasing away the presence of God. We may feel like we can, and people do feel they can. I have met a number of people in my life that felt they have made such a mess of their life that they chased God off, that they can't even imagine. One of the near-death experience people that I was listening to was a physicist, an atheist, physicist, atheist, often a common combination, but did not believe in God, was run over while she was riding her bicycle by a big SUV. A woman that was texting rather than watching where she was going ran over this woman on a bicycle, and she died. She died just for a few moments. She was drugged under this SUV for quite a ways. But she encountered what she said was God. It was a living reality that was so beautiful and so vast her physicist mind could not wrap around it. And she now talks about it as she's no longer an atheist, but she doesn't hold the view of God that she rejected. And that's what I find very interesting. I think most atheists are probably people who have just rejected the idea of God that they've been presented. They haven't been presented other ideas that maybe they could grasp, maybe they could embrace. And so I'm not going to try to convert any atheists, but the near-death experience does convert a lot of atheists because they will report themselves as a non-believer. See, they're not saying, I come back believing in the Jesus Christ thing and all the, the Christian perception, or if they're Muslim, that whole idea. It's that I have experienced a deeper reality I didn't know was there, and it's very much alive, and it's very much with us all. And it is a real eye-opener to these folks. And I think those are the stories I find most fascinating, because you take someone who is an absolute, it doesn't exist, when I die, I'm dead. I was listening to another woman that was a surgeon, and she learned surgery from her father. Grew up in a medical home. Atheist, absolute rejection of God. Same thing, she had a allergic reaction to something and found herself floating above the surgeons in the operating room, described to them later what she saw, which was totally accurate. And then she had this incredible experience, came back no longer an atheist. And it took her a long time to figure out what to do with that, but she could not deny it. And again, we're not trying to sell the idea of God, but how to think of it. Even if somebody totally puts up a brick wall and says it doesn't exist, has nothing to do with my reality, it does. It has everything to do with it. We're living being, we're living proof. Prove that God exists. All you got to do is look at yourself. Because there is a life force, and it is expressing through each of us, as us, in a very beautiful way. We're a certain size window. We are expressing some of that. And the deeper we go into ourselves, the wider we open that window, the more we open the shades of the window, I should say. But it's always there. So it's good for we humans to fully embrace the fact of infinite intelligence, especially when we are feeling at a loss for what we are to do next in our moments of uncertainty. We can affirm, let there be light, knowing that the full intelligence of God is responding even before we ask. We will think that the presence of God is not here when we don't know what to do. If we say, let there be light, what we're doing is opening our minds to that possibility. I don't know how it's going to shine through, but I just know it will. And through this whole moving process, I've talked about it several times, but there have been a number of times I didn't know how we were going to do this, how it was going to work out. I've only driven by our old building once since we've been out of here. And it just seemed like that was never going to end. That whole end of the time, that particular time. Very important time. But so many times I would say to myself, what next? What do we do next? Feeling at a loss. And I would sometimes feel myself getting depressed over it, just just the feeling of everything hanging and nothing moving like it's supposed to and all of that. And I would always remember to come back, to what I know is true. But it's so easy to get sucked into that, the appearance of things, how it feels like nothing's working out, nothing's working like it should, as fast as it should. It's never as fast as it should. But it always does work. And here we are, we're ready to tear out this wall, and that'll be a whole other thing. But and I'm looking forward to the celebration of the transition. We're going to do something to celebrate this, because it's worth celebrating. But this is where the order comes in. Jesus alluded to the orderly aspect of intelligence when he said, first the blade, then the ear, then the full grain in the ear. We affirm the intelligence of God is working through us now to establish favorable conditions in an orderly manner. So it's just a way of thinking that we should adopt, that will be helpful to us if we do adopt it. Where, okay, I'm looking at the seed or the blade first. It doesn't look like the full grain in the ear that I want. Can I affirm that everything is in divine order? That this is how it's unfolding. This is how it is looking right now. And it's moving, because there is this infinite intelligence looking for a greater way to express itself. And it's doing that now. It never has stopped. What stops sometimes is my perception, my definition of what is fast enough. And I don't think God has ever moved as fast as I wanted God to move, but usually for a good reason. When the dust settles, you look back and see how everything worked out. First of all, you say, well, it did work out. And does it really matter how it works out? That's where we get hung up. And we think, infinite intelligence is not doing its job. It's not doing its thing. Well, it is. Because Advent is the lead-in to the mystical birth or revelation of our own Christ consciousness, we can affirm that divine intelligence is very much alive in bringing to mind the right mental and emotional states that invite this higher awareness. I think it's interesting that we'll be celebrating the birth of the Christ next week in a torn-up building. I thought about trying to find a manger someplace so we could have a service there, but I don't know where one is. But it'll be an improvement over that, I'm sure. So, but that's, it doesn't matter where we are in terms of what the place looks like or what the life looks like. What's important is this greater intelligence is always emerging, always being born. And I've gotten where I don't, like using the term Christ to describe my spiritual consciousness. And that's a personal thing. I have not dropped it. It's just, what do you think of when you think of Christ? Where's your mind go? All of the New Testament means Jesus when it uses the word Christ. Every person that uses that word in the New Testament is referring to Jesus. When Paul says, Christ in you, your hope of glory, we love that statement because we're thinking about the spiritual dimension. When you read the whole context of what he's talking about Jesus. And Jesus in you is your hope of glory. What's that mean? It means the Jesus Christ message that was taught in the New Testament. When you get that, when that's in you, that's your hope of glory. He's not talking about the spiritual dimension. He is talking about the teachings of the church. When you get that, that's your hope of glory. That's your salvation, because that's what they taught. So we like to take things like that out of context. And if you'll read almost any statement in a New Thought book, you'll see that there are a lot of little ellipses, that things that are removed from that particular statement. And I love the statement. And I read it the way I want to read it. We're not obligated to read it the way that it was written, but let's also understand the way it was written. I think there's a lot of value in that. Because the truth is, Christ in you is your hope of glory. That spiritual dimension that is your soul is your hope of glory. Doesn't matter what you call it. I just prefer not to go down the religious route because the mind goes back to Jesus so often. You go walk down the street and say to anybody on the street, Christ in you is your hope of glory, they're going to think you're talking about Jesus. That's the terminology. That's the dictionary meaning of look up Christ, look up Messiah, either word. They're both interchangeable with the name Jesus. Not in our thinking, though. So we're not obligated to go that route. It's just that I prefer to come up with more modern terms so my mind doesn't go back there. I made peace with that pretty much. But now I'm making peace with I don't have to use that term. I'm not obligated to do it just because you see it in all of the unity literature. I understand what it means, and I understand what the Bible writers said it means. It means the man Jesus, speaking of the man Jesus. Okay, I don't know how I got off on that, but I did. This, of course, is not a seasonal aspiration, but the Christmas season reminds us of the spiritual truth we strive to express. As we affirm, let there be light, let us do so knowing the light is already shining in full force at the center of our being. It is our privilege to let this light shine. So that's really the whole point of it. I always say in every holiday that we celebrate, there's a spiritual principle, and the one we celebrate in Christmas is this spiritual awakening that we have. And we all sing about Jesus. We all look back, the 2,000 years and all. It's an important part of our culture. It's an important part of our upbringing, and I don't want to get rid of that. I want to keep singing our hymns and the beautiful music that we share every year. But we want to be sure, as we're going to talk about next Sunday, that we understand this awakening is not something that happened 2,000 years ago. It's going on in us right now. Thank you for watching this week's program. If you enjoyed this video, please share it with others. We want to reach as many people as we can, and we appreciate your help. If you'd like to help support this ministry, just click the donate card at the top right-hand corner of your screen. Your financial support means a lot to us. We have many subjects in our video lineup, so feel free to take a look. If there's a topic you don't see and would like me to address, just put it in the comment section. I'd love to know what's on your mind. To subscribe to this channel, simply click our logo. Thanks again for your interest in independent unity, and have a wonderful week.